Haha! It worked, I think. Hey, what's up, chat? What's up, everybody? How does it look? How does it sound? Does this seem correct? Because I'm currently live on my normal Twitch and YouTube channel and also on the Real Good channel with all kinds of different stuff all jumbled together. And if you see any weird stuff or it sounds weird, let me know. But it looks like it's working. On my end, as far as I can tell, it's working. And welcome to another Thursday stream. If you're new here, that's surprising, but every Thursday I stream on my channels and Real Good AI streams on their channels. It's often Craig or Mandy or a mix of the team. And every other week there are special guests. 2 weeks ago we had guests on from Doorways for Uganda. If you didn't see that stream, I think the VOD is out here. There are clips that will be coming on the social medias. Make sure you follow Real Good AI on TikTok, Instagram. Cool social media clips, informational social media clips, funny ones also. And make sure you follow this Twitch channel, and if you're on my channel, make sure you follow twitch.tv/realgoodai. And if you don't know what Real Good AI is, you must not have been one of the 40,000 people who watched Mark's stream on Friday, where he talked about it for the first time publicly. But I am the president of the board, and Mandy, that sounds more important than it is. Doesn't mean I do anything. Mandy is the director, executive director of Real Good AI, and that means that she's in charge. And what it is a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit, the mission of which is to advance ethical AI, to empower other nonprofit organizations and humanity in general with the best possible version of AI, and to help address all of the concerns that so many people have. There are a lot of concerns. If you didn't watch Mark's stream, you're out of the loop on this one. But yeah, so that's what Real Good is. That's what we're doing here. And I'm not the only one here. You heard a couple woos, but today I'm going to be joined by Mandy, executive director of Real Good AI, and also our special guest for this week, someone you've seen on stream previously if you watched that stream, but who is a special guest because this will be her final appearance potentially on a Real Good stream. And the special guest is Mayleen, who, if you're watching on the Real Good side, is this person in this video up here on my stream. It broke, so you don't get to see her in this one, but you'll see her in a little bit. Anyway, Mandy, say hi.
Hello. Were we supposed to say more than that?
I don't know. I thought you might have more to say, but I did. Mayleen, also say hi.
Yeah, hi everyone. Excited to join the stream again, and excited to talk about some of the stuff I've been working on with Real Good AI this summer, and even some other stuff. I'm an applied math PhD student at Cornell University. If any of you, are interested in knowing more about the PhD experience or applied math or what it's like to be a mathematician, those kinds of questions, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer. But also, if you have questions about the data science stuff I've been working on with Real Good AI, I'm really excited to talk about that.
Cool. And, well, my controller keeps disconnecting, which is not my favorite thing. But if technology will continue to cooperate, I'm going to play Mario Kart while we all talk to... Okay, this controller's not going to work. Got it. While we talk to Mayleen, and I quickly change my plan again.
Adaptability, super important.
Nobody
All right.
Look at the man behind the curtain.
It's fine. There's twice as many curtains today, so it's even weirder than it usually is. But yeah. And Mario Kart disappeared, but I'm sure that'll come back any second now. And there it is. I'm going to switch over to the Mario Kart thing and make sure that this piece of technology is working. Am I hearing my own
your
voice?
double.
Yeah, that's coming into me too. I don't know what that's from.
So you were putting it in Discord before, right? Is that where it's coming from?
It
Okay.
sounds like it's coming through a different microphone or something. I don't know. Maybe that was an aberration.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, chat. Thanks for bearing with us. Sorry about that. But we're really excited to talk to Mayleen today because we get to talk about all sorts of really fun topics that I think are really important for you guys to understand, was like some of the things that we're actually doing, because we've talked about a lot about the high level of like what this organization means and what we can do, but like let's show you one specific example of some of the good work that we're doing to actually try and help people with data science. That's one important aspect, but I think Mayleen's perspective is also really hopefully helpful to a lot of you if you're thinking about graduate school, if you're thinking about math or science as a field that you would like to work in. I would love if you could ask some questions and we could get this to be more interactive, but we do have some questions that we can start with as well. Happy to take any questions that you have, so please put them in the chat and I will be looking as we go.
I Rock the Jiggle is also majoring in math. Just finished up your classes for an associate's. Nice. Good job.
Nice.
Oh, I just started a challenge and then took my hand off the controller. That's okay. Well, it feels silly for me to ask about Mayleen's research, but I feel like that's what we're going to start with. Do you want to start that, Mandy? Do you want to dig into? You were kind of an advisor.
Sure.
I know it's the wrong word,
so
but
Mayleen, do you want to talk to us today about what you worked on this summer? Just like a high-level overview.
Yeah, totally. So what I've been working on, and I guess I'm kind of wrapping up this week, is a tool to help nonprofits, to help educate, I guess, nonprofits, or help them plan for the future and learn a little bit about maybe trends, patterns regarding nonprofit revenue and financials. So nonprofits, right, they have their really awesome missions. They're trying to do good stuff in the world, and in the world that we operate in, money talks, right? Like you need money to do things, from running studies to helping feed people to all these amazing things nonprofits do. And so one of our goals, I think, of Real Good AI is being able to provide high quality, data driven, like tools with really high quality science behind them and statistics and math that can help nonprofits gain insight into the various different types of problems or questions that they may have. For example, if a nonprofit had a really good year, should they expect that next year will also be a really good year? Should they change anything to make sure it's a good year? Should they hire all that new staff, or should they maybe pause because you had one good year, you might want to like wait a couple more years to see if that trend is going to continue? These are questions that they might have. And so we are very fortunate that I guess nonprofit IRS data, a lot of that financial data is made public for a lot of reasons, especially transparency. People are donating money and they want to know where that money is going, right? And so there's this organization called the National Center for Charity Statistics that has compiled a lot of this data that the IRS releases into like a cohesive data set for researchers to explore and use to answer certain questions. So what I worked on this summer was I started with that data set, which has financial information from like 3 million nonprofits in the last 33 years. It's a very, very big data set. When people talk about big data, like this is a huge data set. And the goal that we started off with was, can we build a model, a good prediction model, using all this information that we have from the last 33 years from over like hundreds of thousands of nonprofits, to help predict the future for nonprofits, to predict future revenue. And I will say this, like, the project evolved a lot in the last 12 weeks, but I'm really excited about the tool that we did end up landing on. I think it's going to be a really cool tool to help nonprofits explore trends, explore revenue trajectories, and get a sense for what are possibilities that could happen to them based on what has happened to other nonprofits in the past. I'll pause there.
So you said that this data was huge. What does that mean? Could you not use it on your computer?
I guess it's not that big. That's a good point. Well,
Well, for a mathematician, right? Data sizes mean something different to different people, right? For you, it was like a new horizon of like larger data, but for a computer scientist, maybe it would be a teeny data set. So like, if you had, it was like 700,000, you said, right?
What I ended up, I did work on a subset, I guess, of the full. I was talking about the full data set. I guess I worked on a subset. I worked on 33 years of data that, well, yeah, was on about 700,000 nonprofits and maybe like 100 variables. And so 700 orgs, assuming, I don't know, 30 years of data for each org and maybe a certain number of variables. And then I brought the scope down. I ended up selecting, I think, like maybe 10 variables to look at. So yeah, in that sense, yes, this is maybe not big data for some people. For me, it was big data, and I think the real maybe new, the really big new thing for me was that in a lot of my research as a PhD student, I haven't really worked with real world data sets. The space that I operate in my research specifically as a PhD student, a lot of times it's sufficient for the space to do analysis on simulated data sets and kind of do more of like proof of concepts, like here's what you could do with this new methodology that I present, versus what I was working on this summer was very concrete. Here's a real world data set, and by that I mean the data came from real world sources, it came from real nonprofits that have existed in the last 33 years, and I had to do something with it.
That's really interesting.
Great.
I honestly, I'm not a mathematician, but that does still sound like a lot of data to me, but it's very relative. Someone in chat asked, Rock the Jiggle asked, where's this data? Is it free? Yeah, it's literally a free public database, right? That you said
I put the link in chat.
Oh, yeah,
Yep.
There you go.
It's completely open source.
It's because nonprofits have to file their IRS data, and they make it open so that like websites like Charity Navigator or the other ones that like rate charities can actually see where the money's going, and it holds them more accountable to the public, that you can actually see how they spent the money that you donated to them.
Yeah, this isn't usually a thing I would applies to this context that we're in right now very directly, but if you're ever thinking about donating to charities, or if you're ever curious about where your money's going, or whatever, you think something seems sketchy, Charity Navigator is a really great resource, and there are other resources. They collate all of the public filings and public information into, they give like ratings, and they tell you like, oh, 90 cents on your dollar you donate to these people goes directly to the mission, 30 cents on your dollar you donate to these people actually goes to the mission, and the rest goes to overhead or whatever. But that's not what we're here to talk about. That's just a really interesting thing.
I'll just mention, since Bob mentioned it, Real Good AI is on there, but we're not rated at all, and we won't be for a while because we're such a new organization, and they give you a couple years to get up to snuff before they can make a determination.
You need to exist for a while before they go all in on all that. But
absolutely. Okay, so Mayleen, I want to talk about more your project this summer. Like, did you end up working on the methods that you set out to work on?
Oh, I did not. I think that's probably something that was a good lesson to learn, and not one that I didn't anticipate, but that when you're working to do data science, when you're working with a data set that comes from the world and you're trying to answer a question, like a real world question, we call it in academia. I guess for a lot of folks, there's a lot of problems and questions that are real world, but that you have to be able to, like, I don't know if what the phrase is, roll with the punches, or unexpected things happen, and then you have to adjust, adapt, think critically to, okay, I didn't expect to run into this problem or to run into this, or I didn't know when I started that this aspect of the problem would be this way. How am I going to adjust so that I don't just give up and say, oh, okay, I can't do anything more. I can't do what I started to do, so I give up, and really try to problem solve. What are different ways I can approach it, or what do I need to think about differently so I can still say something meaningful or do something meaningful or even accomplish the goal that I had, but in a way that I didn't think that I would have to. Okay, that was super general, super abstract, super broad. So specifically what happened, I'll simplify it a little bit too, but we were thinking of training a machine learning model on this data. Prediction is a goal of machine learning algorithms. People do this all the time. And whether you're using regression or a decision tree or something slightly fancier like a Gaussian process, this is a common, I would say, machine learning task, prediction. And even something like predicting financial trends is a common task. And so I was thinking, like, the vision was, okay, a nonprofit will come and say, this is maybe the sector that we're in, like we're an arts organization, and we make typically in a typical year we make this much money, and we are situated maybe in California or something, or this area of California, and then they input that information and I spit out based on like our data model and our regression model or our Gaussian process model, here's what we predict is likely to happen for you in the next couple years. And maybe with some, or ideally with some sense of what we call uncertainty quantification or confidence intervals, basically. Some sense of, we don't know, we can't actually tell the future, but here's how confident we are in our prediction. And here is the ways that we could be wrong about that prediction, how far off we might be. And what changed was not necessarily, I would say, the end goal, but the way that we were approaching the problem, because this is an amazing data set that we have, but it's limited in the sense that the current iteration of the data set only goes through 2022. And this is just because the IRS is a little bit like behind, I guess, in publishing certain types of information. So for example, right now on the National Center for Charity Statistics website, it has a note that it includes the year 2022, but the IRS is still putting out that data. Like they're still publishing the 2022 data. So I didn't even use data from 2022 because we had a lot less data because the IRS still hasn't really published it all. And so really I only had records complete until 2021. What happened in 2020, 2021? A lot of things, big things happened, right? Like there were a lot of, I would say, shocks to in so many different areas across so many different domains. And we didn't feel as comfortable anymore being able to say like, oh, if I only have trends through 2021, a lot changed for a lot of people and a lot of organizations in those years. And then we want to be able to predict now into 2026 or 2027, but I have a gap from 2022 to 2025 right now. I have that gap and I don't know what happened in that gap because I don't have data. And so I feel less confident about being able to tell an organization, here's what's likely to happen in 2027, when we really only had data through 2021. And a lot of things could have changed in that time. So the scope changed a little bit because, again, we want to provide good tools, like amazing tools to nonprofits, but we also want to give them like high quality, more reliable tools. We don't want to just throw anything out there.
Awesome. So was there anything about the data cleaning that you weren't expecting that you might have to do, that you ended up having to do?
Yes. This is spoiler alert. No, yes.
Preliminary question for the normies out there. What's data cleaning? I assume it's kind of what it sounds like, but what does that entail?
Yeah, great question. So the thing about real world data is we like to call it messy. Now messy, yeah, we actually do call that, like data scientists, we call real world data messy. And what we mean by that is, so everything from the fact that human beings submitted those IRS forms, right? It is entirely possible that they missed a zero or like missed a number when they input that data. So some of the data might just have errors in it. There are missing values in the data because not every maybe line of a tax form is required to be submitted. Maybe there are certain lines that you have to submit and others that are like optional or only if you meet certain criteria do you have to submit it. So it's not like I have every single variable for every data for every organization. I have a lot of missing numbers. For some organizations, for whatever reason, we just don't have data on maybe the number of paid people they had in their organization, possibly because either it wasn't required as part of their filing that year or whatever reason. There are lots of reasons why data can be missing. There's lots of reasons why there can be errors in the data. And even in the process of like pulling that data from the IRS and putting it into a cohesive data set, mistakes can happen. And so that's why we call real world data messy. There's unexpected things. Also in the ways that people put together the data. You could imagine that maybe one of you would say, could go onto the IRS website, pull up some tax forms and make notes on what these organizations that you looked at, what kinds of revenues did they have. But you might you might have one way to describe that data. Someone else might look at the same data and describe it slightly differently in a way that makes sense to them. And you're both talking about the same thing, but you called it different things. And maybe even what you called, like, you were thinking total revenue, and in your mind that included certain sources of revenue. For another person, they might call it total revenue and consider even different sources of revenue because their like way of thinking of total was slightly different than yours. So that's something else you have to contend with. It's not necessarily standard. It does probably help that the IRS has like these forms that are more standard, but even these forms in the past 33 years have changed. So it's possible that particular thing was called one thing in 1990 and it's called something completely different in 2015. So there's like all these different things about real world data. Now, if you start to think about it, about having to sift through 3 million organizations' tax forms over the past 33 years, that's a tall order. Probably actually not something that's super feasible unless you have a team of like, I don't know how many people you would need on staff just to look at the data and verify and call organizations and say, are you sure this is the number? And hey, we noticed you didn't input this number. Could you give us that number? Like, it's really challenging. And so when we say like cleaning data, we mean we get this data set that has possibly errors, possibly missing values, possibly just structural things that I didn't expect or didn't know about. For example, one of the data sets is supposed to be, there's exactly one like line per organization, and it tells you like the organization's name and what subsector they're in, and maybe their address or something like that. And it's all done by their employer identification number, EIN. And that is unique. Each organization has a unique employee identification number. So if I just have a master list of all organizations that ever lived, then I would expect exactly one record per organization, one record per employee identification number, because they're unique and there shouldn't be duplicates. But one of the things I ran into were in one of these data sets, I had duplicate values, and it wasn't immediately clear exactly why. Like, was it because they had submitted something to correct a previous thing? Was it because of something happened in the data merging when the National Charity for Center for Charity Statistics, when they merged their data, could there something have happened there? Why was that record duplicated? And so trying to sift through and figure out the answers to those kinds of questions so that I decide what to do there in that circumstance. If I need the subsector for this particular organization, which record do I pull it from? How do I decide? And if I have a missing value for this particular organization for this category, should I just ignore that organization and throw that data out completely? Or should I try to guess what that subsector should have been? Should I try to do something different? These are all questions that come in. And then it's that process of like exploring the data and asking yourself these questions and then doing your best to, when you answer them, do something defensible, do something that sounds reasonable, do something that makes sense. And that'll change depending on what your goal is even. And then at the end, the goal is to have a data set that you can use for your analysis. And that might mean you can't have missing values in it. Or it might mean you had to, spoiler alert, do some sort of scheme to detect outliers or to detect data points that kind of were really unexpected or super big or super small and not the norm. Because sometimes that can, depending on what you want to do with the data set, that can even screw up your results.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about outliers then. I know you wrote a little write-up on this in our last newsletter that went out, And so you sign up for Real Good AI's newsletter so you can get nice, cool science stories about that. But can you give us the lowdown on what the deal was with revenues with outliers?
Yeah, one of the big, like, I think challenges of modeling financial data in general, I would say, but especially that I encountered in this particular data set on nonprofits, um, is that so many things go into a particular revenue in a particular year. And some of it I do have information on, some of it I don't. But there are shocks to the system. For example, the 2008 like financial crisis recession and 2020 COVID. These are things that happen and kind of maybe weren't expected and caused either like years where you did especially bad, but kind of everyone did especially bad, or most people did especially bad, or even years where people did especially well. Maybe if like at any point there was an economic boom, these things kind of happen. But then even within the organization level, things happen all the time that are unexpected. You get a new donor or you lose a donor, like a big donor, for example, or a fire breaks out in the building that you're in. Lots of things can happen that can cause an organization to have a really, really bad year, like a year that's just so bad compared to their previous years, or a really, really good year, like a year where you like doubled your revenue that year or tripled it even from previous years. And so these types of unexpected kind of deviations from the norm that an organization would expect can really screw up the modeling portion. In particular, because what I'm really trying to do with modeling is uncover underlying patterns in the data. And the problem lies in if the pattern is being screwed over by one of these outliers. There could be a trend where I see like generally every year they're making about 50,000, maybe a slight increase every year by, I don't know, 10,000 or something. And then one year they get this huge grant or something happens. There's this huge endowment and suddenly they shoot up to like, I don't know, 500,000, but it's not actually like an every time occurrence. And then the next year they're back to every year about 50,000, or I don't know if those are realistic numbers, by the way, don't quote me on those numbers, but like that's the idea that a year could happen where something super unexpected happens that may never happen again. But the math, the model can't necessarily pinpoint that that's a year to like ignore. I'd have to tell it possibly to ignore that year. Like, oh, I look at a plot and I'm like, yeah, that year, ignore that year. That shouldn't fit into the pattern because clearly that does not fit in with their normal trend. But to actually be able to do that with math, to tell a computer to be able to find those outliers, that's a little bit harder. And so one of the tasks that we initially weren't too worried about the outliers, but as we were in the initial modeling phases, kind of exploring what the model could look like, we were seeing poor model performance. It was doing, the model itself was just not doing a very good job at predicting. And we were looking at some plots and noticing that there were a lot of these, or not a lot, but there were definitely a lot of cases where there were outliers and we were thinking that this could affect the model. A lot of it depends on the extent of how many outliers there are and what you're trying to do. But so we ended up diving for a few weeks into, can we use math to help identify some of these outliers so that we can tell our model, like, ignore these points because they shouldn't fit into the pattern because they're super out of the normal pattern and they really shouldn't factor in to what you think will happen next. The reason
as your organization, right, you can't count on a huge endowment to keep going, right? There's no way we could possibly predict that for you. We can hope that and manifest it for them, but there's no way that makes sense to belong in the prediction model. Sorry, yeah. Continue.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for adding that. And so the issue was really that the data set was too big. I mean, I was looking at about 8 million records. So 8 million records that I would have to sift through manually, or actually, sorry, 700,000. That's the wrong number. 700,000 that I would manually have to look at and then look at their trend and see, are any of these points, do they seem like they should be outliers, that they're out of the pattern? And by my rudimentary calculations, assuming it takes me 30 seconds to look at each of these organizations' plots and identify something, it would have taken me something like, I don't know, 3 years. I can't remember what I put in the I think it was something like 2 or 3 years that it would have taken me to go manually through this entire data set and identify the outliers. And this was a 12-week internship. Okay. And I was like in week 5 or 6. I did not have 3 years to manually go in and find every outlier. We had to figure out a way to use math to be able to do this process. And I would it have been as like accurate as like a human? I wouldn't say that necessarily, but did it get the job done well enough and fast enough to help us move forward with the interesting part, or not the interesting part, but with the original goal, which was, can we use this data to give nonprofits a sense of what to expect in the future based on data?
Great. And so let's give them specific, like, well, not specific, but pretty targeted numbers. How often do nonprofits just have an unreasonably good year? How often do they get endowed?
Oh, well, okay. I don't know if I could answer the question specifically about what caused a particularly good year.
Sure. Thank you.
Like, yeah, or not just that. It's like I have data on like if they had a good year, for example, but I have no idea why that was a good year for them. I don't know if it came from a government grant or a generous donor or they blew up on TikTok. Like I that's not the kind of information that I had available to me from my knowledge. And so I can tell you if they had a really good year. I can't tell you necessarily why they had a good year. Excuse me, but I should have prepared to share this plot. If you look at the newsletter, I have a nice little plot. In general, most years, if you were just looking at outliers, not positive or negative, like just whether they were a good or extra bad year, every year about 4% of nonprofits, actually less, I would say between 2 and 4% of nonprofits experienced either a really good or really bad year. More often it was a bad year. So I would say probably between 1 and 2% every year. Well, no, maybe I think if it was at a 4%, I would say about 1% every year experienced a really good year. I don't know why, again, because I don't have that information, but between 1 and 2%, I would say every year a nonprofit, except 2020 and 2021. Those were exceptionally bad years for a lot of people, for probably reasons that you don't even have to guess. You probably know.
Great, thanks. That's really interesting. And so, all those nonprofits out there who had a really great year, pat yourself on the back. You're in the 1% of nonprofit luck. That's amazing.
It's hopeful though is the fact that, sorry, I was just going to say really quickly as the hopeful thing. I mean, for the most part, it was always less than 4%. So like, seems like most of the time you're doing about the normal. You're like not having a really good year or a bad year. You're just having like an average year, which is not a like, that's kind of hopeful. It would suck if like most of the time people are having bad years, but that's not the case.
Right. Okay, so now we have the data. We remove the outliers so we're not fitting trends that aren't really there. Why did we choose to not just throw this in a neural network to make a prediction?
That's a great question. I think something for me that's really important in this space in general, but especially when you're trying to inform potentially decisions people are going to make that are going to affect themselves or others, like in this case, thinking like, I don't want to toot my own horn and say like this is going to be the most used tool by all nonprofits ever. I would hope that it would be useful enough that a lot of nonprofits would use it and gain from it. But thinking anyway, even if one nonprofit uses my tool, I want to be confident that I'm delivering something that is useful to them, that is high quality, because if they're going to make any decisions at all informed, even in the slightest way, by this tool that we created, I don't want to lead people astray. I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing and that it's ethical and that it's reasonable, and that I did my part, my due, what is it called? Not due process.
Diligence?
Due diligence.
Due diligence, thank you. Due process is also important. My due diligence in making sure that I thought of as much as I could and did my very best to put out something high quality. Okay, so where does that get to me? To neural networks. Something that matters, in my opinion, when you're trying to make a decision. If someone tells you, oh, do this thing, and it's a big decision you have to make, or a decision that could affect people, yourself, or others, is why. Why should I go one way or another, right? That's a really important thing. Explain to me why option A is better than option B, or why I should consider option C. Explain to me these things. And neural networks are often what we call, as scientists, black boxes. And really what we mean by that is, like, if you think of a black box, imagine I had things in it, but you couldn't see what those things were. That's, I guess, the idea that I would think of a black box. Like, a neural network is one of these, the class of neural networks are oftentimes these models where they will give you a decision. They will say, we predict this, or we say this, but you can't ask it to tell you why. It won't tell you why you should do that. And that matters. That matters even just from a general perspective of, like, I want to know that you're telling me something that's not total BS. I need to know that there's a good reason to do this. But also think about applications where what you decide affects a mom and her child, and she comes to you and says, why did you make this decision? Can you tell me why? And you can't answer. Like, that's pretty awful. That's horrible. Maybe, and so I wouldn't want a nonprofit to come to me and say, hey, like, your tool maybe suggested this or gave us this to consider. Can you tell me more about whether I should whether I should take that into account, or if I'm going to make a decision, tell me more about that decision. And I can't give them a reason. I mean, then my tool wasn't even helpful, because probably a good nonprofit would say, okay, then we can't trust anything you're saying, because we need a reason. We need to know why you're suggesting one thing or another, or why you're telling us this. And so I would hope that if I can't give an answer, that they're going to move on, right? But I'm trying to build tools that are impactful for people, that people are actually going to use and find useful in some way. And so, in my opinion, that usefulness can't come without explainability in the majority, if not all, applications.
Thank you. Very well said.
I agree.
So another thing I know you were thinking about all this summer is computational efficiency, right? Because this is a big thing that we talk about a lot at the lab, at our lab, which is Real Good AI. I don't know if I'd call it a lab. Our nonprofit, there you go. And it's something that I know that you had some major wins on. Can you talk about your approach to making sure that we were doing things in a computationally efficient way this summer?
Great question. So, one of the aspects that I had flowing around in the back of my mind was a question of whether any of the computations we were doing was feasible for me to do on my laptop. Partly because to be able to use other computing resources does cost money. And even though I knew we were not doing anything like large language models that have this huge, potentially huge cost to train to the environment and like require these data centers, we're definitely not doing anything like that. But it's still something to consider. Like when you're using up computational resources, when you're using up your own time, you're using a laptop, whatever you're using, there's a cost to it. Whether that cost is monetary or time or to the environment, it's important to consider, right? So in the back of my mind, there was always this like, the thing I'm trying to do, can I do it on my computer? Would I need to do would I need to use other resources? And if I did, what would be the justification? What would be reasonable in terms of other resources? Thankfully, we were able to do all of this stuff on my laptop. But the thing that maybe I came across the most was the limitation was time. So a lot of the work that I did was coding. I would do coding to do certain, to tell the computer to do certain things for me. And there are there are ways that you can do tasks efficiently, and there are ways that you can do tasks a little bit less efficiently. I don't know if I can I think of a good example on the spot of just like a real world thing? Or I guess like if you're oh, I don't know. I want to say something like pouring milk into my cereal or something, and think about what's a really inefficient way to pour yourself a bowl of cereal. But I'm struggling.
Using an eyedropper. There you go.
So that's great. Yeah, like I could take a little eyedropper and drop by drop fill my bowl with milk. I could do that. Why on earth would you do that? That's beyond me. But I could do that. That would get the job done, but it would be super slow, super inefficient. And so oftentimes it was a matter of me coming to the team, actually to the research team, and saying, so this is taking me this much time. It's not scaling very well. Like the outlier detection problem was one where, again, or there was actually a point where I did have math that I was using that did speed up. It got me down from 2 or 3 years to something like 70 days, or sorry, forgive me if I actually haven't pulled up. I can probably tell you exactly how many days. Oh no, maybe I don't. I got it to be something faster, but still not fast enough. So I came to the team and I just said, hey, this is taking a long time. What can we put our heads together, brains together? What are some ways that we could make it run faster, but still do just as well? There might be, maybe I'm using the dropper to pour my milk and I haven't thought about opening up the jug and pouring it in, so to speak. And I feel like I can't take all the credit for sure. A lot of times it was that collaboration piece. It was the research team putting our heads together and talking through, okay, let's look at how you're thinking about the problem, what you're doing. Maybe you haven't thought about doing it a different way, and that different way can save you time. So I think I would say that would be my approach. I was conscious of it, and then whenever I got stuck, I just asked for help. And we put our brains together, and collaboration is awesome. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Awesome. And yeah, and just to be clear, chat, because there's some questions in the chat about this, this was just on her laptop, and it was like at most running overnight sort of things to get this tool that will hopefully be useful for a lot of people. So people are asking, why not just do nonprofit work? Why use AI? Because AI, and we're probably thinking about AI much more broadly than you are. We're not thinking generative AI. We're thinking AI in terms of like statistical and mathematical models that can be used to help make decisions. So those sort of things can be transformatively important to nonprofits to be able to have access to. And if we can do it once in a smart way, it never has to be done again. And like I said, we don't have data centers. That's not the scale of thing we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, this would derail, if we got into this every time someone asked, this would derail the conversation that you guys are trying to have. But I think it's important to reiterate whenever it comes up, and Rexy, you gave us the opportunity to do this. AI does not mean ChatGPT, just to be clear. AI does not exclusively mean generative AI either. AI includes any data analysis model where things are automated, things like Gaussian processes, things like machine learning models. These are things that scientists do on a regular basis. It's not, I mean, they do them wrong, or they do them inefficiently, perhaps, and they could use the help of a real data scientist or statistician like Mayleen or Mandy to like do a good job of what they're trying to do. But this is not like, oh, we're just using the tools, the AI tools, all this new stuff. These are methods that have existed and that scientists use and are very valuable, and are not just some new chatbot that we're trying to use to shift the paradigm and Web 3.0 and all this stuff. So
what I would like to add to that is that this definition of AI these days is very broad. Some of the methods that we're talking about, like for example, regression, have been around since like the 1700s. People weren't calling it AI in 1700, even like probably 20 years ago, people weren't calling it AI. But now a lot of things are being rebranded or called AI or talked about as AI. I think for a while there, everything was machine learning. And that was the rebranding. And now we're in the AI era where everything's getting rebranded as artificial intelligence. And so I wouldn't personally have called the stuff that we worked on this summer, if we worked on it 5 years ago, I don't think I would have called it AI. Now, technically, we could call it that, but it's very broad. Definitely not ChatGPT, definitely not large language models, definitely not the same category of AI as what's like you're probably seeing on your feeds a lot with these generated things.
But again, that if we want to talk about that endlessly, it'll just derail any other conversation. But it was a good opportunity, Rexy. We see that your concern and your point, but that's we're talking about something else here.
And I spent the whole week answering emails about these, and so that's why when I saw your question, I had to answer it. Sorry for derailing us. So let's get back to the project you worked on. So, Mayleen, if you had infinite time to keep working on this project and perfect it, what would you do next? What would you add to it?
One thing I would add is actually more data. I know I've talked about like having this huge, like all this data. Part of the reason why I say that is there's like the open source data set that I use, there's actually even more data on it. For example, it has data on private foundations as well, non-charities that are private foundations. And none of that data right now is being used by the tool, partly because of time constraints, like Amanda alluded to there with if I had infinite time. And so, for example, I would love to incorporate some of that data because of the way that the tool works, the data that's not represented in there means that if you're an organization, for example, a private foundation, there might be some things that are different to private foundations than the kinds of foundations that are currently in the data set that might not generalize as well to your type of organization. Which actually just made me think of something that I should add to the tool, to the description on the website. But so I would add more data for sure. And I would like to explore other things we could add to this tool to provide either more information to nonprofits or different information to nonprofits. What we have right now, I think, is super cool, great, and I think it has the potential to be a really cool tool for nonprofits to explore and use. But again, I didn't incorporate all the data that I could have. And there are possibly other approaches that we could, if we put our heads together again, we could think of other approaches, or something that we even talked about, like something I would love to be able to do is give more of a sense for why certain changes happened. My background is in causality, and to be able to say causal things like X causes Y is actually really hard. It's really hard. You have to be really careful when you're trying to make any sort of claim that is causal. But I think it would be super cool to be able to give some insight as to, for example, these outlier years, what causes a good year, what causes a bad year, what causes an upward trend or a downward trend. I think that would be something, if we could add that to the tool, would be amazing. The truth is, we might be limited in that we might not have the data that we need to be able to make any statements like that. That's probably the reality. That's the case in a lot of, almost all the time. But if I had more time, I'd love to put more thought into that and maybe explore what else we could do with this tool to be even more useful to nonprofits.
Unfortunately, we don't have infinite time, but I would love it if we had infinite time. Okay, so we've talked about it enough. I'm pretty excited, but it's probably pretty abstract to people in their minds. Would you mind giving us a quick demo of course, the draft, because it's not going live right now or anything, but
Sure.
Can you show us how it kind of works?
Yeah, I totally can. Let me know if you see it on the screen.
That's a Bob task. Sorry, I sort of sprung it on you, but you're not doing a blue thing right now.
Nope. Let me just see if I can. There it is. There's it on one screen. Let's seize it on the other screen. There it is. Look at that. Look at all that's functioning. All right. It might be a little fuzzy. Sorry, it's a little low res chat 'cause we're doing this through Discord screen sharing and stuff. But hopefully you can read it and see what Mayleen is sort of walking through here. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So this is our web-based app that has not launched yet. We're still making some small tweaks to it. But the idea is an organization can come, choose what their broad subsector is, and this is actually precisely, it's defined, it's related to IRS codes and stuff like that. But there are some broad categories. For example, I might be an arts organization, and then I input my employee identification number. This is maybe actually a real number, I don't know, but it's fake for now. Or it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I need to have 2 to 5 years of revenue history data, because essentially the way that the tool works is it looks for other arts if you're an arts organization, it looks for other arts organizations that had similar revenue patterns as you did, or revenue trajectories as you did. So for example, here, let's say I'm an arts nonprofit, and in 2022, 2023, and 2024, this was my revenue pattern. I have 3 years of data, and I want to know what might happen in the next 2 years. What might 2025 and 2026 look like? So maybe in 2022, I made about 50K, 2023, I made 52K, so about the same. And then I did even slightly more, 55K in 2024. So I get to submit this. Then at this point, you get the opportunity just to double check that you entered everything correctly. You can, if this looks good, I submit. And then it takes a few seconds to do the computation and find those organizations that had similar trajectories at some point in the past. So what it's doing is it's looking at any point from 1989 to 2001, because those are the years I have in my data set. Is there another arts organization that had this very similar revenue trajectory as you? And then because that happened in the past, I can actually look at what happened to them right after, like what happened to them, and that can give me some insight into what could happen for me. It's an interactive plot, so that's kind of cool. So here, this example I've chosen very specifically. So the organization, like you pretend that you're the organization who used this app. You are this black, solid black line. I can even get rid of the other organizations for now just to look. And so these are the 3 revenue values I put: 50K, 52, 55. And I think it would be reasonable for an organization to say, well, we've been slowly but steadily increasing the last 3 years. Should we expect this trend to continue? Should we maybe hire more staff, or should we do something else because we can expect that this will continue? And what our tool is kind of showing is that based on what happened to other organizations that had similar trends, there's a chance that you might actually have an slightly off year. I wouldn't even call it a huge off year. You started at 50K, and this kind of predicts you might land around 50K again next year, so you might have a slightly downward trend. And this is coming from other organizations that, again, had a similar pattern. But then for about 4 of these, the next year was not as good of a year as the past 3 years. That's just what happened to these 3 organizations. One organization, this pink one here, if you can tell with the squares, they actually kept increasing and then stayed steady. And so the way that we hope that organizations can use this tool is as one, again, just to maybe, check, be a little bit more realistic about what could happen next. But it's not intended to be like, for sure, next year you're going to have an off year. Part of the reason why we display other similar organizations is you might be able to learn something from them. So below we have actually their employee identification numbers. Again, this is all public information. So you can actually go to the IRS. There's a tool. You can input their employee identification number and it'll pull up their IRS forms that they've filed. We have their current organization name. And so you can ask yourself, which is organization 3, that's Delaware Ballet Company. You could even potentially see what happened to them in 2015 and 2017. Well, in 2015 to 2017, they had similar revenue as we did. And then in 2018 to 2019, they grew and then stayed steady. I might want to reach out to them and find out what did they do? Maybe I can learn from them. Maybe I can learn so I can maybe possibly get something similar to their trajectory. I might even want to reach out to these other organizations and find out what went wrong those years for them. And again, this is purely for educational purposes. It's not 100% sure that this is, whoa, this changed. I hope it didn't change too much for me. It went full screen. But it gives you some sense. And then we call it a confidence interval. This shaded region tells you a little bit about how what is the range that we, with our data based on these other organizations, about what is the range you might expect. So we're kind of computing something in the middle. If you scroll down, I have more concrete numbers here where, okay, in 2025, I'm predicting you'll make about 50,000. Again, this is a downward trend because in 2024, you made 55,000. But if I were to give you a lower, just to be safe, a low ball estimate, I would say maybe about 44. If I were to be a little bit more optimistic and give you kind of a higher range of what you might expect, I would say maybe you'll actually make about the same 55K. And this is coming from a 95% confidence interval that we're generating based on this Gaussian process model that we trained. And so again, it's mostly a tool for educational purposes, but we're also hoping it gives some insight by also giving you these other organizations that you might be able to do a little bit more research into to figure out what they did differently, or what you might want to do differently from them, or what you might want to do the same as them. And that could help you plan a little bit better for the next couple of years versus, again, just crossing your fingers and hoping that the trend will continue. Maybe I'll pause there and show.
That's really cool. I had heard about this and sort of generally knew what you were doing, but actually seeing it and hearing you walk through it does make the usefulness really much more obvious to me. And I would be curious. I mean, I always say this, and it sure gets old for everyone I've said it to. I'd be curious what real nonprofits think of this tool, when they actually get to use it, when it's public. What they think, and if they reach out to other organizations, or if, I would wonder. So it finds the organizations that it thinks are similar to yours, right? Can you say, I know an organization that we are sort of mirroring, or we want to mirror? Here's their EIN. Can you include them in my in the chart for me so we can see what their public filings info, or see if they're in the system or whatever? Because I know you paired.
Bob,
What?
no.
Question, but no. So right now that's not implemented in the tool. I
Yeah.
will say that one maybe, again, limitation coming from the fact that I didn't use all the data that is open source from that National Center for Charity Statistics is that it might very well be that your organization is actually not in the current data set that we're using. It's in the larger data set that's on the website, but I didn't use that full. Again, for example, if you wanted to compare against a private foundation, I just don't have that built into the tool at all right now. Although I think that's a cool idea.
Honestly, that just occurred to me. I know that's not in this, but like, given this information, someone who used this tool could obviously just go look up the info about an organization they're familiar with personally, because it's all still publicly available. And they could say like, oh, well, so what if I pull these numbers for this other organization that I'm sort of friends with, and I know what they've done, and I can see how that affected. Like, they don't need your tool to get the info. They need your tool to understand why the info is useful and how to look at it in a useful way. So like,
Well,
you
and
absolutely
if you
do that on
include a
your
random
own.
other organization, even if you feel like they're like generally similar. I mean, look at the first part of this plot, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these are not kind of similar because we have 700,000 to pick from and over like long periods of time. It's probably super similar in
Mm-hmm.
how they're evolving in time. I think it's super unlikely that you just putting in a random organization would ever come even close to modeling it well enough to rival the way that this tool internally works. Although that might make like sense in terms of like nonprofit strategy, and you can sure like look them up. Like you said, I would not personally want to include them in a tool like this because it would muddy the picture.
That's true. Well,
And not the picture, I mean muddy the modeling.
it might break your understanding too. You're like, oh, we're just like this other organization, and then the actual data is like, no, you guys are very different and basically unrelated. So
Well, that's a good point about like how
hard to
we're
know that as a
defining
person.
similar here, because we are purely looking at like organizations within your subsector that reported similar revenue. So if you look here, we reported 50K. If you look at the other organizations, they all reported around 50K that first year. Our second year was 52. All the other organizations reported about 52, pretty close. And in that third year, all those organizations we're looking at, again, similar numbers. And that's how we're defining similar organization. I definitely agree with Amanda on the like just putting in a random organization, even if it's one that you're close to or know is similar on certain aspects with you, would screw up the modeling piece. I do could see why someone might want to just see their trajectory on this plot or something, or just be able to visually see their trajectory and how it compares to yours. But yeah, so we can't do that with this tool, at least not yet, and not exactly that way. But this is what we have.
Nice. Oh, it's cool to see.
Yay. Okay, thank you for humoring us, chat. I know you're here for Mario Kart and science chat
I'll
while
make the
you're
science go
watching
away,
Bob win
chat.
at
Don't
Mario
worry.
Kart.
The scary science is all gone.
It's not scary, it's awesome.
The big confusing numbers went away. I'm on your side, chat. Don't worry. We're not smart enough. Actually, some of you probably are smart enough. I just know that I'm not. I do words. I don't do numbers. I've come to terms with myself.
There were definitely people in chat that were here for it. Ellie says, "No, I'm here for the science." Yay! Thank you so much for showing up for the science. We appreciate it. We're still gonna talk more science though while we play fun games. So Mayleen, thank you so much for describing your project. We really appreciated seeing it, and I'm just like so excited to roll this out to nonprofits because I think it's a really helpful tool to see and sort of foster these collaborations through learning from each other, which in nonprofit world you would think everyone is so, working together because we're all in the same sort of team, but it can be more competitive sometimes, and I love that we get to advocate for that through math. Love it. Okay, so what was your favorite part about working at Real Good AI this summer?
Let's see. Oh God, what to choose from? There are so many things.
Yeah, imagine I'm not your boss. Imagine I'm just a person. You can be honest. Be honest in the chat.
I think actually this might be a great segue, honestly, into talking about grad school stuff. I think well, one of the things that to me was just so impactful and so valuable and like can't even describe, like quantify how important it was to me is how welcome I felt on the team. And I'll say I'm just a PhD student. And in the grad school academia world, that can mean that I constantly have to prove myself to one person or another, sometimes for good reason. Like, I mean, I'm getting a PhD ultimately, so I do have to prove to someone that I know what I'm talking about and that I deserve like this PhD, right? So there's some of it built into the grad school thing. But I guess that's I'm coming in some sense with baggage to the team this summer. I came in wondering like how I would measure up, and will I constantly be feeling like I'm not doing enough, or like I don't belong, or I don't mesh. There's just all these things that are coming in also just from my experience in grad school. And it was just so incredibly amazing and refreshing to be in a team where everyone appreciates everyone else's contribution and we can have fun, and that Amanda and the other team members were really intentional about telling me when I was doing a good job. And I think that matters as much as telling you when you're maybe need to do better on something, or when you need to get constructive criticism, like constructive feedback. For me, it matters to get a signal, some sense that I'm on the right track, that I am doing a good job, because I was working really hard this summer. And one of my fears was that I would work really hard and it just wouldn't be enough. Like, it just wouldn't be enough for people. I think it's sad that I have that, like, that was something that I came in with. But I felt so welcome and so valued and so appreciated in this team. And I just can't express how, I'm gonna cry, how important that was to me, and how it reminds me that like that does exist, and I don't have like, my future doesn't have to be constant feeling like I'm not enough, or constant feeling like I have to prove myself to someone. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and you are valued, Mayleen. I'm a cry too, but we've loved having your work, and it has been exceptional this summer. So everyone, big round of applause for Mayleen. But so you touched on there a little bit of a thing that I think we should talk about a little bit further, because I think it is a thing that a lot of students deal with these days, and that's imposter syndrome. I think everyone to some degree has this. Whether they'll admit it out loud or not is a different issue. I know I definitely have imposter syndrome a lot of times. Um, how do you deal with those feelings? And I guess can you define imposter syndrome first, just in your explanation too?
Yeah, it's imposter syndrome, or sometimes you might hear it called imposter phenomenon. It's I'll describe it to you how it manifests for me, which is me constantly feeling like I have been lying to everyone somehow. Like everyone thinks I'm smart and capable and like I'm this good student, and everyone like thinks that I'm doing so well, but I'm not. I've just been really lucky. I've like somehow fooled everyone. I know I have an impressive resume, but like that was all luck. It wasn't me. It just happened to me kind of. And any moment now, someone's going to realize that I shouldn't be here. Someone's gonna realize I don't know what I'm talking about. Someone's gonna realize I'm not good enough. Someone's gonna realize like, oh, we made a mistake. We should have seen right through it. She's not actually smart enough or capable enough. But she's just been fooling everyone. That's how it is for me. It's this constant feeling like I'm gonna get found out. Like any moment now, someone's gonna say, sorry, we didn't mean to let you into this PhD. We just clearly weren't paying attention enough because clearly you're not good enough to be here, or like you shouldn't be here. So I feel like for me, that's how it's mostly been, or like at some point I'm going to be outed as an imposter. I'm not supposed to be here, and I just fooled everyone somehow. So that's how I would define it. That's how it manifests for me. And a lot of my peers that I talk to feel the same way. So it is definitely something that is widespread for sure. Even some of the most like established professors that I've talked to have shared experiencing something like this. How do I cope? How do I deal with it? That answer has changed in the last 5 years of my PhD. Like in different times, I cope with it differently. One thing that I don't know is if it's talked about enough is that I think it'd be easy for someone to say, well, that's kind of in your head. Like you're just kind of insecure. No offense, but like it's not true, obviously. Like you did all these things. So you just need to like work on yourself to be more confident. And I don't disagree completely. I will agree to some extent that this does require like some level of self-awareness of being able to recognize just because I feel a certain way, that doesn't mean it's true. And there's a lot of evidence that it's not true. But I do think that there are certain spaces, especially in academia, and I'm speaking about academia because that's my experience. I don't really have experience outside of academia. I graduated high school in 2015, and then I went to college, and I've been in higher education literally ever since. I've never taken a break. So I can't speak to other spaces outside of academia. I can only speak to academia because that's just my experience. And there are sometimes subtle and sometimes not so subtle signals that are actually telling you you don't belong here. It could be as simple as being from an underrepresented group and just you're literally the only Black woman in your program, or you're the only person that looks like you or to some degree is like you in some way. And that tells you subconsciously that like you're kind of in the wrong place, maybe. It's not true. It's definitely not true. But that's kind of the message that you're getting. Like, oh, most people around here are not at all like me. Maybe that means I actually don't belong because only people that are like that are supposed to be here. So I feel like there are some, and that's just one example that came to mind that's like, I think easiest to visualize maybe, but there are, I think a lot of subtle things, like finding out, for example, that everyone around you has parents that were professors or have PhDs or something like that. And you were the first person in your family to graduate college. And even something like that, like everyone around you has completely different experiences, and it feels like you don't belong because everyone talks so casually about knowing these things because their parents went through grad school and all this stuff and you never did. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that yes, there is some internal things to work through for everyone, I think, that can help you with imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome. but also sometimes the system is like fighting against you. Like they're trying to tell you you're an imposter, even if it's not intentional. I don't think anyone, maybe one person I can think about, but like for in grad school, I don't think anyone ever intended to make me feel like I didn't belong. That doesn't mean though that I didn't have very concrete moments where someone made me feel like I didn't belong. And again, I don't think they intended to, but that was the impact on me. And so how I
I've
coped with it,
people intended towards me.
yes.
Yeah, mine is
Also, there
mine's
are some
very
people that are
different.
mean.
But I could tell you in law school, they definitely intended to make you feel like you didn't belong there. The whole, oh, their parents are lawyers, their whole family is lawyers, their law firm is named after all, like three. I was the only person, or the first person in my family to do law school, and it's very different from PhD program, but it's still grad school. And they definitely wanted to make sure you understood which class of person you were compared to the ones who were like legacy law student people. That doesn't feel great, but
Absolutely not.
I think
Yeah,
a
it
lot of
makes
people
sense that
can
you find
relate
it
to
in lots
that.
of other places. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I would caution anyone who's seeking to go into graduate school, and talking to people there, because it varies a lot, even within a university. Like, I would say that I got really, really lucky that in my particular program at Cornell is full of really great people who are trying to do their best to make like applied math a more space where people can feel belonging and included, and that can welcome people like me, or people of various backgrounds. And I've heard of other places within my same university that are not, that they are intentionally trying to like belittle you and like make you drop out because they only want certain people to survive. And there are other math and applied math programs with those types of reputations. I intentionally did not apply to them. And so like it varies a lot from place to place. And I guess all that I was trying to say was that even if it's not intentional, that can still impact your sense of whether or not you're supposed to be there. And one of the ways I've coped with it is therapy, having a good group of friends around me who can hype me up and also help me be realistic. Like sometimes I don't just need a cheerleader to be like, no, you're doing awesome. Sometimes I need someone to say, hey, I can see that you're feeling down because of this very specific thing. That might be fair, but like, you are a human being with inherent value and worth and dignity. And honestly, like just whether you output this or that does not detract from your inherent value and worth as a human being. Like you don't have to produce anything or make money or like whatever to, as a human being, like matter. And so even just having people around you that believe that too and remind you that you bring more to this world than like your PhD work or than your academic work or that even your job. Like you bring so much more to the world. That's been really important to me to have people in my life like that.
That's awesome. I'm so happy that you have some of those voices supporting you. That's really huge to allow you to do a big powered career like this. Um, So, let's talk more about your experiences. So, you study applied math. We talked about that. How did you get into applied math? What interested you?
Question. I love talking about this because I have loved math since the 4th grade when we started learning fractions. I can't describe why, but before fractions, I did not like math. I felt like it didn't make sense to me. And I still don't really like decimals. I still prefer working with fractions. But I vividly remember in the 4th grade, we got introduced to fractions. And then from then on, I just loved math and puzzles and stuff like that. And so that throughout high school, middle school, high school, all of that, I was definitely like a nerd or whatever. I cared about performing well in school, and I was definitely college minded, and like I did math all 4 years of high school, even though I didn't have to, but they said that that's what you need to do to be ready for college and stuff. And I took calculus, calculus AB, whatever they call it, in my junior year of high school, and I took stats my senior year. And I always did relatively well in my math classes. I wouldn't say it's because it came easy to me, but I just really enjoyed it. Like I don't know how to explain it. I'm a huge believer that everyone here listening, all of you are capable of doing of doing math. Now, whether you like math or not is going to have a huge impact in how far you can get in math. Like, I totally get it. Like, if you hate it, or like if you just don't enjoy it, you're not going to want to spend the time to like be able to do it all, right? Like, that's totally fine. Not everyone has to do math. Math is not the end all be all. It's not the most important thing in the world. But I do strongly believe everyone is capable of doing and understanding math if that's what you wanted. But anyway, I felt like it was something I really enjoyed, and so I would spend hours if I had to until I understood it. I would practice and practice and practice until I could do well. But anyway, high school graduation came, and I was not planning to pursue anything related to math or STEM. Not because I didn't like STEM or science or math, but just because, I don't know, I didn't grow up around anyone that was like a scientist or that did math or anything in that field. In fact, I didn't know very many people who had gotten, like, I knew people with college degrees, but a lot of them went into like being like a high school counselor, for example, which is commendable and amazing work that they're doing. And I knew someone who was getting a master's in social work. And she was the person that I knew with like the highest level of education. And I was like, oh, okay, I want to do that. And so I decided that I was going to get a degree in sociology and eventually get a master's in social work and become a social worker. That was my plan, because I was like, I don't know, what I saw around me, maybe this is a little silly or like feels like you might roll your eyes, but it's true. I didn't see people with like my background, my cultural background, and like people around me. I didn't see them going into careers in STEM. So it just didn't really occur to me that I could do that. It's not like I thought, oh, there's, you know, if I'm like a Latina, so I shouldn't, like, we can't be scientists. It wasn't like that. It just literally did not occur to me that I could be a scientist. And so then what I should have known is when I went into college, you have to take certain classes for general ed or whatever. And I had decided, I love math so much, I'm just going to keep taking math classes even if I don't need to, just for fun. I should have known then and there that I should be a mathematician, because who in their right mind takes math classes for fun? I
No one.
I figured at some point someone would say, I'm sorry, you can't take math classes anymore because you're not a math major. And then I'd be like, okay, fine, whatever. So that was my plan. And I'm really fortunate that I went to a small state school with like really small class sizes, no PhD program for math anyway. And so the professors can get really invested in the students and like have a lot of one-on-ones. And essentially my first or second semester of college, my math professor pulled me aside and was like, you're doing so well in this class. What's your major? What are you trying to do? And I was like, oh, you know, I'm sociology, just taking this class for fun. And they were like, you haven't considered math? And I was like, not really. I don't really know anyway what I would do with math besides maybe be a professor like you. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just like, I don't know, I haven't thought about it. I thought mathematicians probably just are at a chalkboard all day solving for X. That's really what I thought. I mean, maybe a lot of you think that too. Like, I definitely, that's what I thought. And I was like, I don't know. That doesn't sound very important to me. At least if I pursue something like social work, I have the chance to make an impact in people's lives. I have a chance to work with the elderly or with kids and try my little part to give back to the world and make it a better place, even if it's just one life at a time. Not that I'm like super important or, you know, necessary to make the world better, but like, while I'm here, I might as well do what I can, right? With math, what on earth am I gonna do that's impactful? Maybe, I guess, teach, but again, like, what are we doing here? Anyway, so they encouraged me to think about it, and I did my own little research, and that's what got me on the applied math track. So I started like, what do people do with math? And then I found out that people do a lot of things with math, like what I did this summer, and everything from disease modeling. That was my first research project in undergrad. We were literally modeling the spread of tuberculosis in certain populations, with the idea of like, can we model this in a way where we can figure out what are the drivers of the disease and what would be impactful strategies for intervening and stopping the spread of disease? My mind was blown. I was like, what? You could possibly inform policy and save lives with math? okay, I'm sold. That sold me on the applied math track. And so I switched my major to math. Side note, I wish I had double majored in math and sociology, but I did not. It just did not occur to me. So I got my degree in math. My undergrad did not have an applied math or even a statistics degree. So it was just math, and I got to concentrate in something. I actually concentrated in pure math. I really liked some of the pure math stuff. Some of the more
Really? Proofs?
My favorite class in undergrad was abstract algebra.
Ah, boo, boo. You would love measure theory then.
No, actually, I hate analysis. And that's all I think that is or like probability and statistics is like built on analysis. And I liked abstract algebra and I liked linear algebra. I didn't like analysis as much, to be honest, but I actually have to do it more now. I had to take measure theory in grad school. But anyway, so like, and I got to try out some research, like I mentioned, this disease modeling project, and that got me convinced that, you know what, maybe I can give grad school a try. Now, again, similar to how I believe everyone is capable of doing math, I believe everyone is, for the most part, capable, if they really wanted to get a PhD. Now, whether you have the right support, whether it makes sense for your goals in life, not everyone should get a PhD for sure, because there are like a lot of factors into it. But if it was what you really wanted, I think, it's like entirely possible within your grasp. And so I decided to go on that track. I looked specifically for applied math programs. I wanted to make sure that I could do work that would be impactful. Because again, what really sold me was the fact that you could use math to impact people in a good way, to save lives, or to do just something to help make this world a better place, or to better our world in some way. And that's what at the heart of what I always wanted to do. And so that got me on the applied math track. I will say that since the start of my PhD, the problems that I've worked on have applications, even applications that are like positive in this world. But my work has definitely been a lot more theoretical than I maybe at first imagined it would be. And so I think one of the cool opportunities that I had with Real Good AI this summer is getting a chance to do work that feels more immediately impactful. And like I'm getting back to my roots of what I wanted to do in the first place, which was offer something of use to help people in this world if I could, even in a small way. Hopefully in a big way, but I don't need that. I just need to know that I'm helping in some way.
Sorry, I'm getting
Awesome.
too
Thank
into
you
the
so
Mario
much.
Kart. Yeah, that's a really good.
Yeah, I was clicking all the wrong things instead of clicking my unmute button. I didn't want to.
Oh, you were muted. I was like, they're waiting for
I
me
was
to say
trying.
something. Oh, wait, let me
No, I
think.
was worried about it. I was just all click, 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 and gosh darn it, find the Discord.
It's
Thank you
really
so much. That was
generous.
a perfect answer.
Yeah, it's really generous of you to share all that. A lot of people might, I don't know, be too afraid or whatever to share, but it's a really great story, and makes real good. Yeah, sound really good. I don't know. What do you think, Jen?
We're trying to do things for the better, and I really do think that math can do these positive things, even if it's just changing people's minds or making them excited about a specific thing because of something we said about it, and giving people access and help. There's so many things that we can do with our organization that I'm really excited to keep doing. And I love it. It's not a common thing, chat, I will tell you, to find mathematicians who are as passionate as Mayleen. She is a very special researcher that we are very happy to have had this summer. What do you think about your graduate school experience? Is there anything that happened to you or you ran across that you think would be surprising to people who haven't been to graduate school?
What would be surprising?
No is also an answer if you don't have anything.
Oh, no, it's just like, what do I pick, and also what am I willing to share online? And what would be surprising to people? I'm also trying to think of like a good surprise, because I feel like I have a lot of, unfortunately, like bad surprises that happened, but I would like to say something hopeful and positive about grad school, because it wasn't all bad for sure. It wasn't like the worst decision of my life or anything. I did experience one of the worst periods of my life, but
Sure. I'll go first. I'll say a surprising thing. A surprising thing is that even though you're like doing your major, so you don't usually have very many credit hours that you actually have to do, because research takes up like 99% of your time, and that's not very many credit hours, right? You get like a whatever they give you for that. But you are a student of the university, so you get to do all sorts of fun things. There were like archery classes or like other fun things that people took just for fun, to broaden their horizons while they were there. And so even though they were there to do some like very serious STEM, there are other opportunities for you to do. I was in the orchestra during my time in grad school, and it was very fun. I guess actually it was a band in grad school, wasn't it? Anyway, the point is that there's all sorts of fun extra activities for you to do that people don't even think about, and you should take advantage of those being free while you're in graduate school.
That's a good point. I did. So one awesome class I took advantage of taking some of those PE classes. I took a weight training course. It was weight training for women specifically, because if you're at all into lifting or weights, like it is a male dominated space, or was historically, so it can be a little bit intimidating at the gym to try and go to the rack of weights and stuff like that, because you're like, I'm gonna look dumb, or I don't know, everyone's gonna know I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm gonna hurt myself, all this stuff. Anyway, I took a class, and I still use that was like probably 3 or 4 years ago. I still use those skills to this day, and I do. Yeah, I'm not a lifter by any means, but I do some strength training because it's important. And I also took like a dance cardio class. That was super fun. I can't dance to save my life, but it was so much fun to flail around to fun music. What's another good surprise? Oh, I mean, I think these things can vary also. Like, I don't know that some of my surprises would happen in different places or whatever, but I maybe this is actually unique to me. So for undergrad, I went to a local state university, so I actually lived at home with my parents. Saved me a lot of money, FYI, just so you know. But also meant that coming to grad school, which I'm from California, I'm now in New York for grad school, 3,000 miles away. That was also my first time like flying the nest, leaving the place. So I think there were actually a lot of surprises for me, just because it was my first time being like my own independent adult, not living with my parents, like having to do things for myself. And in a lot of ways, it was pretty awesome. It was pretty cool. To have that independence. But some of y'all might go away for college and have some of those experiences a little bit earlier in life, a little bit sooner. I don't know. I have found an amazing community of people and friends, and I'm so lucky. And I know people in grad school and other places who haven't been as lucky as I am to find good people. And I think that has made a difference for me in how I wouldn't. There are many things I would like to change about my experience the last 5 years in grad school and about grad school in general. But I don't regret being here, because the friendships that I've made, the ways that I've grown, even just as a person, I'm just so grateful for that. Did sometimes grad school make life harder than it really needed to be? Yes, it did. Oh, but you know what? I do think that, and I would I do things differently if I had, like, if I could change some things? Absolutely, 100%. But I was surprised by, like, thinking about leaving where I live right now, like, actually does make me a little sad to think, like, even bring a tear to my eye. Like, don't get me wrong, I can't wait to leave, but at the same time, some of the community that, like, I've been a part of here has just been life-changing for me. I definitely encourage anyone who goes to grad school to try, and it's hard. It's so hard to make time to even know where to start. But that's been one of the most impactful things for my PhD, has been being able to find people that, like, a community to be a part of that's actually outside for me of grad school.
I think maybe one more thing we should mention too, maybe this isn't a surprising fact because maybe people know this already, but unlike your undergrad where it's often very expensive to go to school, when you're a graduate student, you don't typically pay the tuition. They give you a small stipend. I'm not saying it's a good living or anything. They give you a small stipend to live off of. You typically like TA or on a graduate fellowship or something. But the point is, if you're getting a PhD, you are not going into further student loan debt in order to pursue that education. Now, you are deferring your original student loans you had, which they do accrue interest, possibly, while you're there. And that is something that you're maybe surprised about when you finish your PhD. But that is a thing that I will say out loud, at least in the STEM fields. Typically, you will get offered some sort of assistantship. And so it's not as big of a hardship as an undergrad might be financially.
Yes, chat. The grad
Yeah.
school was the friends we made along the way. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so you've referenced it a little bit that your interest in your PhD is in causal inference, but can you tell us what that means and like talk to us like we're at a cool cocktail party and you're telling us about this like casual on a Friday night, not like you'd tell your advisor.
Yeah. I've been thinking about how I had to talk about it with my grandma over winter break. And my grandma, sorry, side note, but I gotta shout her out because she's incredible and amazing. She immigrated here from El Salvador with, I think, maybe like a 3rd or 5th grade education, because where she grew up, like, it was like you get married early and then you have a bunch of kids and like you are a homemaker, and you don't have time for education. You have to like help a lot with, anyway, she came here and then after a long time, like when she was already grandma, had like her grandchildren, she took night classes, eventually got her high school diploma, not GED. She got a high school diploma, like a year before I got my high school diploma. And she still takes classes, like at like not college classes, but she still takes other courses, like I think maybe community college level type stuff. So I just wanted to shout her out because she's amazing. And I had to explain to her what I do recently. And anyway, so what is causal inference? Causal inference. So, where should I start? A lot of people, a lot of decision makers care a lot about what causes something else. What do I mean by that? Well, public health, you want to know before prescribing a medication or before letting a medication widely out to the public that it actually does what it's supposed to. You want to know that it causes better health outcomes, that it actually fixes what you're trying to fix, right? Even with something like vaccines, before releasing a vaccine to the public, you want to have some evidence that it does cause lower disease rates, right? You care about those kinds of decisions. Even a program like a nonprofit that is working with a local community, like with a food bank, for example, to help feed children in the community. You want to know that your food bank actually is helping the people you want to help, right? You want to know that all your hard work, all the care that you're putting into this mission is having an impact. And it could, like, there are lots of reasons why it might or might not. And especially because at some point someone's going to have to give money to it, and you need to convince them also that you are having the impact that you're trying to have. These are all causal questions. If I take this pill, will it take away my headache? If I take this pill, will it help alleviate the symptoms of a disease? If I do this, like, if I I'm blanking on examples. Oh, a popular one is even like these big social media sites. Like, they want to know if I make the user interface one way, like on Netflix. If I show you your recently watched first versus the top 10 in the world, like what does the user actually want? Does it cause you to enjoy Netflix more? Does it cause you to spend more time on Netflix if I organize things a certain way? So like everyone cares about causal questions, mainly because to make a decision, sometimes you need to have you have a causal question underlying. What is the impact of X on why. Is this intervention worth spending millions of dollars on? Is it actually going to help? Is it actually going to do the thing we want it to do? But causality is not an easy thing to be able to make concrete statements about out in the wild. Because to be able to say that something causes another thing, well, that's just really hard. It's fundamentally what you're saying, like when you say, if I take this pill, it will remove my headache. What you're saying is that nothing else removed your headache. And if you hadn't taken that pill, your headache wouldn't have gone away. If there was an alternate universe where everything else was exactly the same, but you did not take that pill at that moment in time, your headache wouldn't have gone away. You're talking about like an alternate universe that you have no access to. Like it's something you can't know for sure, because you can't see what would have happened if at that moment in time you had not taken the pill, because you can't go back in time. Or if any of you have a time machine, let me know. I have some things that I'd like to explore with you or talk about. So causal inference, it's hard to be able to say for sure this pill took your headache away. Because would you say that Advil took away your headache if you knew that if you hadn't taken that Advil, your headache would have gone away anyway? No. Then that doesn't mean that Advil caused your headache to go away if it would have gone away anyway. So causal inference is all about, when can we say that that pill did take away your headache? When can we say that that vaccine lowered your risk of disease? When can we say that that program actually improved the lives of kids by feeding them? When can we say those things? When can we be sure? How sure can we even be about those kinds of statements? What kind of data would I need? Or if I have data, what aspects of the data, what does my data need to have in it? Or like what are my requirements on this data? Or what are my requirements when I collect the data? What types of analysis can I do statistically? And what am I willing to assume or not assume so that I can say something causal or not? I'm going to pause there because I don't know how good of a job I'm doing. So if people have questions, or Amanda, if you have a question or want me to go back to something, I can.
I'm following along pretty good. Hopefully that means chat's with us.
Yeah, so chat, you might have heard a lot, like, correlation does not imply causation, right? So people study this a lot where they're like, oh, things are, over time, they're correlated. What she's trying to say is one step further. How can you, under what scenarios and with what caveats can you say this actually did cause this? Correlation does imply causation in that case.
Thank you for putting it that way, because that is absolutely 100% true. Correlation is not causation, but sometimes it is. When can you say that it is? And that's exactly what my field is looking at. And what I work on specifically is methodology for the field. So what are the methods that I can use to untangle, or not even untangle, the causal effect? Actually, a lot of what my work does is it's like assuming there is an effect, and I just want to measure how big of an effect. Because you might be able to say like, oh, this medication does have some effect on your health outcome, like some positive effect, but like how big of an effect it has might be important. Maybe that's not the best example. Oh, like if I'm about to invest millions of dollars into a public program to like feed children, for example, I don't want to spend billions of dollars just to find out I only helped 2 kids. Actually, honestly, maybe you would. But like most people want to know that they're helping lots of children. They're like, I'm putting a lot of money in this. I want to make sure we're doing a good thing and helping as many people as we can with that money. And so the analogy there is like, before I actually proceed with the results of this, I don't just want to know if this causes this another thing, but I might need to know how much of a cause it is. If it's worth spending more time in that type of intervention, because if it ends up just having a teeny tiny effect, there might be something else that's more effective or that has a bigger effect that you should actually pay attention to. So a lot of what I work on is, once, like, if there is a causal effect, how can I quantify that causal effect?
So I have to ask first, have you seen any really funny or like humorous causation fails where people are just using correlation to imply causation where they definitely shouldn't be.
You know, I probably don't have anything funny. I have actually more just really like infuriating, sad. Like I feel like a lot of the times it's like people making the mistake, but it's like affecting a lot of people that they're making that mistake. I don't know. A lot of times it isn't. I feel like I could come up maybe with something funny. Like an example I always like to use just as here's a funny thing on like correlation versus causation is if you look at the numbers on the sales of like sunburn lotion. So like if you got a sunburn, maybe you buy something for that sunburn, and like ice cream sales. You could probably plot those and they would both go like up at the same time and like down at the same time, maybe. And so you could come in and say, wow, whenever sunburn sales go up, so do ice cream sales. You know what? I think sunburn is causing ice cream sales. Like when you get a sunburn, you go get ice cream. Actually, that might not be totally wrong. Or like ice cream is causing sunburns.
Right.
Like when you think that, oh, because whenever ice cream sales go up, so do sunburn cream. Well, then it's the ice cream that must be causing it. When people eat ice cream, they get sunburns. Now, that statement itself, like, if I want to make it causal, like it's the ice cream causing the sunburn, that's obviously silly. That's that can't be the right thing. What's the real explanation? You in the chat probably like might have guessed. Well, what happens when like what else might be happening that ice cream sales go up and sunburn lotion sales go up? It's probably really hot days. And on hot days, people want to get ice cream, and on hot days, people get sunburns. Like, and on hot days, other things happen. So in that case, what we're saying is like, there's actually this third thing going on that's affecting those things. And it's causing an association, like it's causing them both to go up and down at the same time, but they're not causing each other. There's actually a third thing. In this case, it's a really hot, sunny day that's causing the other two things. And so that's like, I think a common mistake is you might see trends and see that they're following each other and then want to say, oh, they must be causing each other. But that might not be the case. There might be a completely other thing that's causing both of those. And that's why you see some sort of correlation. And I guess, so that was a silly example. Maybe a more realistic scenario. A more realistic scenario. You might ask, like, does having a college degree improve, like, make it so that you're richer later in life? Does having a college degree cause you to have higher paying jobs? You might think like, totally, yeah, that seems reasonable. But if you look at people with college degrees and people without college degrees aren't a random thing, right? Like what factors into you going to college? There's a lot, from whether you can afford to go to college, to whether you want to go to college. Like you might have a career in mind that doesn't require a college degree. There's just like a lot of factors that go into whether or not you get a college degree. And so it's not necessarily immediately fair to compare people with and without college degrees, because there's a lot of other variables that also impact what kind of job you get, right? For example, if you can't afford to go to college, then maybe you're coming from a poorer family, and the type of jobs that your network like has are already lower paying jobs. And so just the fact that you were poorer to begin with means that your job outcomes are lower to begin with. Will having a college degree help? Yeah, maybe it could help. But simply comparing people with and without college degrees isn't enough, because there are all these other variables that affect both you getting a college degree and what kind of job you get, similar to how a really hot day impacts sunscreen sales and ice cream sales. Just wanted to make a more real example.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mayleen. So that's all the serious questions I had. Bob, do you want to ask a fun question?
Sure. Uh,
I see
all
you're
right.
getting frustrated with your Mario
We're
Kart.
it's going fine. I'm doing really good, ish.
That's why I was in this area once and I like left immediately because I was
Doing
mad.
doing great. I have all but one Waluigi costume, which is pretty good, and I have all but one secret box in the stupid area. So we're doing real great, and maybe I'll go somewhere else. Go to the beach. So, Mayleen, I think we talked about this on the last stream you were on, but who knows how many people who are here actually saw that. You really like theme parks. Or is it amusement parks? I don't know. What would be the most accurate thing? And what is the most recent one you've gone to?
Yes. Theme parks, amusement parks, the main difference is just whether they do theming or not. So like Disneyland is clearly a theme park because they have a very specific theme and they go all in on theming the world. Like they try to make it immersive so that you literally feel like you're in a different world. Versus an amusement park, oftentimes Six Flags parks, if anyone's familiar, they're more amusement style where they're not necessarily into any particular theme. They might have some themed areas, but they're more for amusement. They have big rides, and that's more their focus. Um, yes, there was a technical difference between the two. I do love, and I love both. I definitely think like theme parks give you this like different experience that if I had to choose, it would be theme parks. But I also love roller coasters and just like that fun stuff. I just recently, 2 or 3 weeks ago, visited Canada's Wonderland, which is just out like the Greater Toronto area. It's a amusement park by, I guess there are lots of areas that are themed, so I might consider it a theme park, by Cedar Fair, which also owns Cedar Point, and I believe also owns blanking on the name, but the one year Amanda
Kings Island.
Kings Island, and just acquired Six Flags actually. So yes, I do. I just came back. I honestly, for me, like I love the roller coasters and I love just the vibes. I love Disneyland. I love Universal Studios. My favorite park at the moment is probably Disneyland because I'm from Southern California and I lived actually close enough to Disneyland my whole life that like at least once I had money when I started going to college and had a job, I went very often. I had a Southern California resident pass. So it's one of my favorites, and I just have really good memories from there. But then Universal Studios Orlando, I went there for my 1 year wedding anniversary, and it was just amazing and fun.
We actually did a big family trip to Universal Orlando in like 2018,
yeah?
and it was like one of our favorite trips we've ever taken.
Yeah, it was just amazing. I can't wait to go back. I actually would rather, or I have never been to Disney World in Florida, but and I definitely want to. It's on the bucket list. But I wouldn't mind going back to Universal Orlando first. Actually, I had such a great time. For me, it's mostly though about the like. It's been a way that I got to connect with people, and in particular, my husband. Actually, we met at a amusement park. Fun story there. And it's one of the like. He's definitely like the theme park aficionado. Like knows a lot of facts on roller coasters, and like we'll be at a park and he'll know who made the roller coaster. Like, he'll name drop the company that made them. And yeah, anyway, so he's like a roller coaster nerd, absolutely. And I love them enough, and I love the experience enough that it's just like one of the fun things that we get to do together and bond, and it's like a special thing that we do.
That's really fun. Do you have a favorite specific coaster or ride, or are those different things? Because I know.
Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, am I gonna remember? Oh, Steel Vengeance. Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point is my number one. And apparently, if you're a roller coaster nerd like my husband, that's like everyone likes that. Like that's everyone's favorite. So I'm not being contrarian here. That's everyone's favorite. And absolutely, it's like I loved it. We just visited Cedar Point like in July of this year, and absolutely my favorite roller coaster ever.
What kind of coaster is that? I've been to Cedar Point a few times, and I don't remember Steel Vengeance. I remember I liked
Did you
Magnum.
go
I
on-
specifically liked Magnum, but is that maybe that's newer?
Steel Vengeance. Let's see. See, this is where my husband knows all the snaps. When
Yeah,
I
sorry, I'm
don't.
asking the wrong person for all of the sweet details.
No, it's really cool. I want to say it's a it's a hybrid. Apparently, it's a hyper hybrid, according to quick Google search. Hybrid, as in it's like steel and wooden roller coaster.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did
And
you go on the one this year at Cedar Point where it kept getting stuck? You know, the one
The
I'm
new
talking about?
Top Thrill. I don't know if Top Thrill was open when you guys got
you know
there.
what? We were at Cedar Point. We went 2 full days, and then like in the morning on a third day, all 3 days, Top Thrill was closed. We were so bummed. We kind of
That's-
went there not just for that ride, but like it's one of those. And we went to Cedar Point once a long time ago, just after we got married, and I think it was like shut down for renovation. So it's still a coaster we haven't gotten to ride.
Yeah, well,
That was-
the original Top Thrill was really cool, but it I believe someone died very traumatically on it. Is why they closed it and renovated it, because it had some kind of really dangerous design flaw. But yeah, that's for coaster enthusiasts. I would imagine that's quite a big thing to like get to ride that and see what the big deal is and
Yeah,
stuff.
we didn't. What we did get to do, which we're happy about, is there's a Six Flags in New Jersey with a similar style of coaster to Top Thrill 2, I believe, called King to Caw, which actually just recently, like they tore it down. But we got to ride it before they did. Like they tore it down like last year or this year maybe. So that was a good one.
That's cool. Well, there are more fun questions, but also we are at 4 o'clock, and I don't want to stretch over time. Do we need to wrap it up, or do you want to keep going, Mandy or Mayleen?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think we have a few more minutes. Like I definitely don't have a huge time crunch, but I'm also happy
Okay.
to wrap it up.
If chat has any questions, we'll open it to chat. Thank you for participating, chat, and for listening, and for coming to celebrate the end of Mayleen's internship here with us. It's really cool that usually when you end your internship, you like do your project and you give your proposal to like, I don't know, 2 or 3 people, maybe your boss and your boss's boss. But we're so excited that you were all here to get to see all this great work that she's done, and it's really special that you get to share it with us. So thank you for your attention and for being on board with all the science. Yes, and for sure say congratulations to Mayleen.
Thank you.
And we wish her very good luck finishing her PhD, hopefully her last year. So
Hopefully my last year. It's almost certain, but I guess anything could happen.
I'm scanning
Okay, well, I'm
chat.
not
It's
seeing
just
any
congratulations, it looks like. Yeah.
Yep. They're
Well-
very happy for you. So thank you so much, and thank you for talking to us today, Mayleen.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Feels
Bob,
kind of
thank you for providing the playing.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say this feels kind of out of place because usually guests are people who are not affiliated with Real Good AI. But we've talked about our website and all our newsletter. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. Is there anything that you want to, I don't know, anything you want to shout out, Mayleen? Any websites or
I do
organizations
have-
you really like? Anything like that?
I guess what I wanted to throw out there, okay, some of you all might roll your eyes, it's gonna be super cheesy, but if you haven't heard it recently or don't have people in your life who are telling you that you are more than what you produce, or you are more than your current job or your academic or the things that you output, you are more than like your bad grade or your good grade even, I wanted to make sure that you all know this, that as a human being, like you do have inherent worth and dignity, and you matter, and you bring other things to the world. And do we all make mistakes? Do we sometimes make mistakes or even do bad things or like things that we regret? Yeah, that happens. One of the, like, for me, the important piece is when you can recognize that and try to do better. And so I just wanted to put that message in case you're listening and someone, maybe you all have amazing support systems, which I hope so, but in case no one's told you today or someone doesn't tell you tomorrow or whatever, that you are more than just what you produce. And it's, you know, there are chances to do better when you do make mistakes. I know we all do them, and sometimes we do have to apologize for things, but that doesn't mean that we're worth less.
Well, that's a really good message. Yeah, well, thanks, Mayleen. That's super sweet. And they haven't said it. Well, someone said it, but I'm sure that chat appreciates that. And that's going to be it for the streams today, chat. I am going to do the old shtick, and we're going to raid Real Good AI from my stream, just to make sure that you all have a chance to follow it. Twitch.tv/RealGoodAI. You should also follow the newsletter, realgoodai.org. Do all the stuff. We're just going to do a quick raid, and then I'm going to end the stream on the Real Good side. So, from my channels, do the raid. If you're on YouTube, twitch.tv/RealGoodAI. There's also youtube.com/RealGoodAI. We're not live there currently, but that does exist, and that's where some of the social media posts all go out there as well. But come over to the Twitch channel. Come follow. We're going to hang out for another minute. Okay, bye, chat.